Not yet. Hello, everyone. We're going to allow another 30, 60 seconds to allow people to join us. We welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. Okay. Hi, my name is Brian McDonald, and I'm Director of Client Relations for Anjali Educational Consultants. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today, where for the next 20 minutes, we will be sharing our key insights and best tactics for college admissions. Then we're going to quickly give you a couple of options if you'd like to meet with us privately to discuss how we might be able to help your individual situation. And then the balance of the time is for your questions. Okay, I'd like to introduce the president of Anjali Educational Consultants, Anjali Maazel. Anjali is a former Princeton University interviewer, a TED Talk speaker, and college admissions expert. She's also the very proud mother of a thriving 24-year-old now in graduate school. Anjali has helped hundreds of students get into their top perfect match schools, including Yale and Stanford, Johns Hopkins and Vanderbilt Swarthmore, and UT Austin, to name just a few. So thanks again. Welcome, everyone. And it's over to you, Anjali.
Thanks so much, Brian. Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be with you today. And I know that many of you are here because you can clearly see that applying to college has become much more challenging. And many of you are probably feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. So let me first begin by just acknowledging that I truly understand these feelings as a parent and as a professional. And by the end of this talk today, after I outline the specific challenges and solutions, I think you're going to feel more clear and in control of this process, but also confident and aligned with what you truly want. So I'd like to start by telling you a story. I grew up in New York City and went to an extremely competitive high school. Just to give you an idea, I had 5 or 6 hours of homework every night, and I felt really oppressed by it all. I did well despite that, but I could not wait to get out of there and go to college. My senior year in high school was truly bizarre. My classmates and their parents got together, and after I was admitted early to Yale, they offered me cash to withdraw my applications to the other colleges. Now, apart from the unsettling feeling this gave me, I had not really decided if I wanted to attend Yale. I wanted to see which other options opened up for me in the spring. And as it turned out, I ended up going not to Yale, but to Princeton instead. But this experience left me feeling really ill at ease. And when planning my own son's education, I was determined that he would not suffer this kind of toxic academic environment that I had endured, which I felt, and I still feel, did not serve me in the long run. But I wanted my son to be happy, first and foremost, and also successful. So how to strike the right balance? The difficulty started with choosing a high school for him. We went back and forth between competitive, well-known prep schools and a small, unknown school that prioritized love of learning and independent projects. And I realized that either way there would be trade-offs, but in the end, I chose the small school where he found his passion. And given that I had been an interviewer for many years for Princeton, as well as a teacher who wrote letters of recommendation and gave college essay guidance, you would think that it would have been easy for me to guide my son through his college applications, right? Not true. So I hired a colleague to work with him, and after many months, at the end of a surprisingly difficult process, he was admitted to an Ivy League school. But that is not what he chose. He made what some people might think was a very unexpected choice, and I'll tell you about it at the end of the webinar. So what I want you to know is I've been where you are. And although I knew the system well, when my son applied to college, I had complicated feelings. Like many parents, I was vulnerable to confusion, frustration, and fear. But I did learn something important. I discovered that my son, like all of you here today, was facing a threefold problem when applying to college. Number one, increased competition. Number two, complexity of the application process. Number three, the rising cost of college. Now, what does this challenge look like in practice? So first, let's consider the competitiveness of college admissions. If you were a Texas student in the 90s and graduated in the top 20% of your graduating class, you were automatically admitted to UT Austin. Today, you'll need to graduate in the top 6% of your class. If you were applying to Yale in the 90s, you had a 18% chance of admission, and now it's under 5%. Now, 70% of USC applicants were admitted in the 90s, but in 2022, it's now under 12%. And maybe some of you read a recent Wall Street article about a young woman with an SAT score of 1550, a GPA of 3.95, phenomenal extracurricular and leadership positions, who applied to top tier schools and was not admitted to any of them. So there's no doubt that college admissions today is super competitive. Now let's look at the complexity of the application process. So 20 years ago, you might have applied to one or two colleges, and the process was clear, simple, and straightforward. Now, because of all the many moving parts of the applications, students are applying to many more colleges, as many as 8 to 15 for my students. So there's a lot to stay on top of. And to give you a glimpse into the complexity, take a look at all the elements that need to be in place for students to have optimal merit scholarship and admission results. Now, this is a timeline for 11th and 12th grades that really is comprehensive and puts together the elements that will help a student stand out and will help them stay organized. So as you can see, there's a lot to stay on top of. Now, recently, a friend of mine was telling me about the ordeal of helping his son apply to college last fall. The numbers of different essays for each college, the completely different online applications to fill in, SAT prep, coordinating with the school to send letters of rec, different deadlines, additional applications, essays, and coordinating summer internships and more. And this was a ton of work and created months of tension with his son. So clearly the complexity needs to be simplified. So after the competitiveness and the complexity of the college admissions process, the fact is that college has gotten incredibly expensive. So if you'll please look at this graph and brace yourself, it really shows how the cost of college tuition has exploded. The red line here at the bottom is the rate of inflation. And as you can see, the black line on the top is the rate of increase in college tuition. Clearly, college tuition has massively outpaced inflation for decades. So private colleges now can cost up to $77,000 per year, while in-state tuition and for public schools can cost up to $28,000 per year. But here's the good news. Merit scholarships can be worth tens of thousands of dollars and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So how do we get there? We want to share with you 3 quick success stories which illustrate how students can gain a competitive edge, simplify the complexity, and maximize scholarships to reduce the cost of college. Let's start with Tony. When we began working together early in 10th grade, Tony had high A's and an SAT score in the mid-1500s. He was stellar in math, so his teachers and family were naturally pushing him toward engineering. But after talking with Tony, he made it very clear that engineering was not what he wanted. However, and this was the game changer, we discovered that he had a significant talent and passion in art as well as STEM. So we matched him with a local art mentor and a summer program to develop a portfolio, the portfolio that he could then include with his application. Exploring his interest in visual art and combining this with his talent in math led Tony to discover a passion for architecture. And this discovery made all the difference. It made Tony really stand out. Why? Because now Tony had a story to tell, and nothing will make you stand out more from the crowd than having your own story that demonstrates genuine passion and growth. So, to summarize, Tony discovered his passion. He simplified the application process, guiding himself to a clear major and career path he loved, architecture. He secured a $100,000 scholarship from Tulane, and by curating his art portfolio and targeting his essays to align with architecture and his new vision for himself, Tony found a competitive edge. So the result was Tony was admitted to Rice, his first choice, where he has now finished a successful freshman year. In this way, Tony solved the threefold problem of college admissions. But not all of us are straight A students like Tony. Many of us get A's and B's. We might have a down year, get sick, or be in a competitive high school, but we're still ambitious. This was Ellen. Ellen had a B average from a very competitive high school, but was confident about thriving in a selective college. So her GPA, it turned out, had significantly improved over the 3 years of high school through her hard work. When she got B's, it was how she reacted to them that mattered. It motivated her to get tutoring and find a college professor as a mentor. She then rose to a leadership position in yearbook and got a summer internship in a startup incubator to explore a major in business. But how was she going to pull all these threads together to showcase her accomplishments? Ellen worked to tell her story in a compelling way. She was able to do that by showing that her journey in high school had been one of growth and responsibility. She demonstrated through her essays and applications how she learned from setbacks and how these setbacks led her to develop and improve. In fact, they became assets. And maybe you or your child are like Ellen, you discovered a specific passion halfway through high school. Maybe you began to excel by the end of junior year, or maybe you're a straight A student who has a clear major in mind from the start. Either way, you may not recognize yet what is exceptional about you, but everyone has a powerful story to tell. So you need to tell your story in a memorable way, your passions, your challenges, your successes. So for Ellen, she simplified the application process by keeping accountable and breaking down the long list of tasks into small steps. Ellen submitted standout applications, and she eventually received 12 scholarship offers ranging from $20,000 to $100,000. She gained a competitive edge by pulling together her academic and extracurricular experiences into a compelling story. In the essays, in her interviews. So despite her GPA, she was admitted as a business major to Emory University, her first choice. So Ellen solved the threefold problem of college admissions. Now, Grace's story is slightly different. She had a mixtures of A's and B's, no test scores, and had a remarkable singing talent to showcase. And so what was the solution to the threefold problem of admissions for Grace? First, to simplify the process by keeping her organized, self-organized, and on task through spreadsheets and an application tracking system. And second, keeping costs down by optimizing all aspects of the application and tailoring the college list in Grace's case. So in her case, she was awarded scholarships ranging from $80,000 to $199,000. Third, as Grace was a singer, she gained a competitive edge by curating her vocal portfolio, her submissions, her reel, and by going to the Grammy camp, very selective, super prestigious camp organized by the Grammys. And in the end, she was accepted by her first choice college, California Institute of the Arts. And so she did also turn down a higher scholarship to her second choice school. Now, The three students we discussed, Tony, Ellen, Grace, were all success stories, but very different from one another. Yet, all of these students, for all of them, they solved the problem of competitiveness, complexity, and cost of college. So, through these case studies, we really hope you've gotten some valuable tips on what to prioritize in college planning. Now, before we answer your questions, which will be the main focus of today's conversation, let's first answer the most common one, which is how you can work with us. So, before we give you the three simple options, here is our track record. So for our 2022 application cycle, our students received over $2 million in scholarships, and our average scholarships per student, total amount per student that they received in 2022 was $182,000. So the return on investment for our families was very high, and our fees were paid for many times over. And in this same application cycle, students we worked with were admitted to some of the most selective colleges in the country, including Stanford, Dartmouth, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, as well as excellent schools such as UC Riverside, Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. And best of all, these were also the right fit, the best fit for each applicant. We made sure of that. So if you want to gain a competitive edge, simplify the application process and keep costs down. Like hundreds of students we have helped ace college admissions, here are the three simple options. So option one is for 8th to 10th grade students. With 1 year early talent development packages, we have the time to identify your kids' talents, discover their passions, and make sure they are really on track. This option also maximizes admissions and scholarships results when they apply to college. We help optimize their GPA, their test scores, extracurriculars, and summer planning. And packages start at $19.97. Option two is for 11th grade students. This year we are booked, we are full on 12th grade students, but 11th grade students are 2-year A-list application package. So our most popular one, this will give you a competitive edge, simplify the complex application process, and keep costs low. We will help optimize essays, SAT prep, and testing, and as well as applications, summer planning, and demonstrated interest score. This package, which allows students to work directly with me, costs $19,997. And then we have a more affordable version, which is basically the same package as the A-list, but instead of working with me, you work with one of the advisors that I have handpicked and trained, and the cost is $79.97. So if you're serious about working with us, please sign up for our free discovery session. Bring your questions. Students, please have both parents with you, so sign up for when they're available. And parents, please bring your spouse. We are not accepting 12th graders, so only sign up if you're an 11th grader or below. And Sydney, our wonderful moderator, will drop the link in the chat now, the sign up link for this free discovery session. So again, this session is designed to explore our packages and answer your questions for 9th, 10th, 11th graders as well as middle school. Students, please bring your parents, so sign up for when they can attend. Parents, please bring your spouse. So before I answer your questions, I want to finish the story about my son who applied to college a few years ago. At the end of the process, as I mentioned, he did in fact get into an Ivy League school. But that's not what he chose. Instead, after doing a lot of research, investigation, deep reflection, and a visit to campus, my son chose an amazing school, Carleton College in Minnesota, which you may not have heard of, but it turns out employers, graduate schools, and prestigious fellowships know very well. It was by far a better choice for him than the Ivy. At Carleton, my son got more attention, classes were more targeted, his professors advocated for him. He stood out, And after his freshman year, he was awarded the Orion Mission internship at NASA and a second Orion Mission internship at NASA the following summer. So today he's in grad school at an Ivy League college and tells me that in retrospect, although some disagreed with his college choice, this was absolutely the right decision for him. And best of all, for me as a mom, he's happy and thriving. So, parents and students, you may be anxious right now, but I can assure you there are many roads to success. Please remember that college is not a destination. The college application process can help you begin to discover a sense of purpose. A great first step in designing a life of meaning and financial growth and stability. And that's what I wish for all of you. So now, let's see what questions you're asking. I am going to look at the Q&A. I'm also just going to share the screen again for a minute, and that way you have my contact info. Wonderful. Okay, so first question. Yes, adjacent to ROTC, are there any organizations that will give you money for room and board cost? Also, if you get scholarships or grants that exceed your tuition, can you use the remainder of the money for your housing? Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the college. Definitely depending also on your family's financial situation. It's going to be kind of dependent, on the institution and on your financial situation. But the main college scholarships that are given directly by the college. Now, you can supplement what they give you from the college in outside organizations like you're mentioning. The thing is, though, that the outside organizations, you have to be very sure that your college is not going to deduct those scholarships from the scholarship that the college offers you. Find out from the beginning, because if a student spends too much time trying to get additional scholarships beyond the ones offered by the college, they may end up in a situation where the college says, well, great, you've gotten $15,000 from this organization, we're going to give you $15,000 less. Now, that's not always the case. Please make sure that you check. College by college, the policy is different. Okay. And the typical fee range, yes, so we had definitely had a slide on that. And the eighth to 10th graders, we charge packages starting at $19.97, and for 11th to 12th, our packages start at $79.97. Do you have experience with assisting students, clients into culinary schools? I have had students apply to culinary schools. But there it's going to be a lot less academic, and it's going to be based a lot more on the amazing recipes that the student is going to be able to present. So that would be the focus. Yes, so maximizing chances of winning a stamp scholarship, tenor saxophonist, passion for jazz, as well as business, variety of leadership experience. Top schools include Miami and Tulane. Yes, so it's wonderful to be thinking about how to maximize scholarships. Now, I hope you got a lot of tips from today's talk so far. What you want to do is make yourself as attractive, your application as attractive to the colleges as possible. One way to do that is, and the main way, is to tell a compelling story. What is your story? What sets you apart from other students? What is it that beyond the grades and the scores are very much a part of your sense of purpose and sense of motivation for your life? Colleges are looking for students who can contribute to the college community. They're looking for students who have a vision, even if you're not sure of where you want to end up, either as a major or your career. It doesn't mean that you have to know that. It just means that even if you are undecided, even if you have various interests, a story needs to combine them in some way that really holds together. And that comes from within. If you are starting out, so Orion, I am not sure what grade you were in. If you have more time, then you can pick extracurriculars and pick summer programs that are going to help you be in a position to tell that story. So mixing something like music and business and leadership, wonderful combination. Get creative in finding ways of bringing those threads together. A well thought out personal project can do that. So again, if you have more time, you can basically set up your choices, extracurricular and otherwise, to allow you to tell that story at the end. And if you're telling it now, then be creative and think outside the box in ways to bring all those threads together. So are the options to apply that you talked about just for 11th grade and below? We are fully booked with 12th graders, so at this point we're not taking on any more 12th graders. We are taking on 11th and younger. So what are some good sources to provide major specific rankings versus overall college rankings? There are many websites. I'm not going to tell you that each of them has their own kind of advantages and disadvantages. If you're really going into the weeds on this, look at what the criteria are for US News and World Report. Look at what the criteria are for niche.com, right? Each of these rankings has a set of criteria that you may or may not agree with. So if you're going in depth in that way, then find out what the criteria are and see which ones are the most powerful for you, that align with what you believe in. Okay, when should a student, will I receive help with scholarships for international universities? Yeah, well, the question is it an international university where the bachelor program is being taught in English? Or is it an international university and do you have multiple passports? And is the course being taught in that language? So there are going to be some scholarships. There are also going to be organizations that offer scholarships to international, but we'd have to go into detail and really find out what your situation is. When should a student begin looking for and applying for scholarships? So this scholarships is really a part of the application process. The same strategic elements that we talked about in today that enhance a student's ability to get scholarships, the very same ones will enhance admission results. So, if it's scholarships through the colleges, which are the biggest ones, then you want to start preparing your junior year and prepare so that you're not cramming everything in senior year. If you're doing prestigious music programs outside of school, would it overshadow participating in school band programs for college admissions? Yeah, that I can't give, some of these questions, I can't really give generic answers. I don't like to give generic answers because I have to first see that choice in the context of your resume, in the context of your transcript. But what's going to matter is your level of achievement and the rigor of the program. So prestigious music programs, if we're talking about summer, they could be added to band. If we're talking about instead of band, then I don't think there's a hierarchy, right? It's like prestigious music programs and then band. The thing about prestigious music programs is that if they are going to give you that boost, it's because you're doing very well within them. So the most important thing is level of achievement within what you're actually doing. If I know what specific school I want to go to, do I have to apply for scholarships directly for that school or outside? Yeah. So, word of warning, don't pick a school and decide you're going to go there unless you're automatically admitted, because in that state you qualify for automatic admissions. Or if you're signing up for community college, that's fine, right? But if it's a selective school, I do not recommend that approach. Make sure your college list is balanced. You have likely schools, target schools, and reach schools. The college admissions process in the United States is not transparent. There are institutional agendas, there are needs that each college has, and those needs change every year. So it is much, much better for students to have that balanced college list, because what that does is then you're not left with a big surprise at the end, right? You've minimized risk and you've spread out. So there are many colleges, sometimes students get very fixed on one school. I'm not saying it's not that of course you can have schools that you prefer, but try to keep an open mind, explore. There are more than 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States, and many of them are extremely rigorous and excellent schools. So keep an open mind, do your exploration. And within each school, yes, colleges generally offer scholarships. The question is it going to be merit-based, or is it going to be based on the income, your income or the income of your family? So those are fine tuning, but sometimes you can combine the scholarship that's being offered by the college with outside scholarships. But again, be very sure that they are not deducting those outside scholarships from the financial aid package that you receive. What percentage of scholarship money the top tier colleges offer is only merit-based and not financially based? Yes, good question. So I recommend a book by Jeff Selingo, Selingo, Jeff Selingo, Selingo. And he talks about buyers and sellers. And basically, for merit scholarships, it's very important to understand how the system works. There is something called yield that comes into play. So there are two factors that influence these merit scholarships. One of them is how attractive you make your application to the college, and that is something you can control, right? And the other is if the college has the ability to offer merit scholarships. Do they have the endowment for it? Do they have a track record of offering scholarships that are not based on income? And there are different resources, including Jeff Selingo's book, to understand which colleges are most likely to offer merit scholarships. In fact, he created a few resources along with the book, and we definitely use those, as well as enhancing a student's actual application, essays, and profile. So keep in mind, if you combine those two, you'll be in a really good position. Because what you don't want to do is focus exclusively on one of those or the other, right? They kind of go hand in hand. They are covering completely different things. The likelihood of a college offering merit aid is based on something called yield, which is the percentage of students admitted who actually enroll. And colleges are trying to predict, if we admit student X, are they going to enroll? Why? Why do they care? because their US News and World Report ranking is partly based on their ability to predict this yield. And in some cases, admission staff salaries and bonuses are linked to that yield, to their ability to predict, right? So what you want is you want to understand that, find out what the yields are for these different colleges, also what their ability is, so the amount of money they have in the past every year offered in merit aid. And on top of that, we want to enhance your chances of scholarship by really choosing strategies that are going to make you stand out. So both of those things together. What is the most important factor to work on during the 11th grade year? Yes, so there is a timing component in college admissions, absolutely. What you do in ninth grade, what you do in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, there should be some kind of focus in each of those years, but it is not a formula, right? It depends a lot on the student. So again, it's not that I don't want to give advice. I don't want to give generic advice that you're just going to go and apply to yourself without really thinking it through. Now, 11th grade, in order not to be, but I will attempt some kind of answer. In order not to be overwhelmed in 12th grade, the way we work with students is we give them a very in-depth interest and strengths assessment to find out what their interests are, what their major and career goals could be based on their aptitudes and their interests. And based on that, we help plan the summer for the following summer. We also prepare a college list, and we start students in January, February on the essays. We also work very intensively in August on the essays. So we have a process. And if you can identify for yourself how to adapt that, then that's great. But that may not work for everybody. There are students who, for a variety of reasons, it's better for them not to start their essays and applications until 12th grade. That's very rarely the case, though. Okay, so what scholarships do you recommend applying to? Yeah, if we're looking at names of specific organization scholarships that are given by, I don't know, the Gates Foundation or organizations, you want to look on a website like fastweb.com or scholarships.com. If we're talking about college-based scholarships, there are quite a number of them, for the colleges that offer merit scholarships. In order to get those scholarships from the colleges, you want to maximize your GPA and your grades, get really strong letters of recommendation. You want to write stellar essays. And if you have the time, because you're starting this process super early, you are structuring your choices, your extracurricular choices, your summer choices, to put you in a really strong position for these merit scholarships. Now, that does not mean, please remember, this does not mean just checking off a bunch of boxes to become attractive to colleges, or to try to second guess, college X wants this, so I'm going to go do it. That's not what this is about. Because the college planning process is your opportunity to get to know yourself. Because the colleges are asking you, what do you want to major in? What do you think you may want to do later? So in order to get to that answer and have it be authentic, have it be really an answer that serves your long-term well-being and success, you need to authentically explore what you're interested in. This is not about gaming the system. This is about an organic process that will be win-win. Because if you do that, if you really pay attention to what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what your aptitudes are, and you make choices based on those things, then the results will automatically take care of themselves. Now, yes, there are some strategic things that you can do, and that's what we do when we work with students. We're very strategic and very tailored to the student. But, we want you to be able to tell that compelling story at the end. But we also want you to have a wonderful high school experience that's meaningful to you and that's going to set you up both, not just in terms of your resume, but also in terms of your well being, in terms of your sense of excitement about your future. So that those are the elements. And someone is asking, does this process apply to colleges overseas? Yes, absolutely. We have students apply to colleges in the UK, in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, as well as the United States. And, how to construct a compelling story that you're going to need for every college you apply to. Doesn't matter what country it's in. Okay, how many letters of recommendation should you include in your college application? Also, what type of ratio, teachers, admin, community leaders, third-party organizations, would you most recommend? Yeah, so this is the thing. We want those letters of recommendation to really boost your chances of admission. So what does that mean? They should be with teachers who really know you, who really appreciate you, who understand what you have to offer, who are enthusiastic, right? We want you to stand out. So if you are currently a senior and asking that question, then you want to reflect back, right? And think about those things. If you are a younger student thinking about those things, then now's the time to really create those meaningful relationships with those teachers in class by participating, by, becoming really an active part of that course, by demonstrating appreciation, And again, I think this is win-win, because when we're fully engaged in something, we have a sense of satisfaction. It's not just about, manipulating somebody to get you to write a good letter. It's really about becoming part of that community in as full a way as possible. And guess what? When you do that, then the results come naturally from that. Now, you asked about how many letters. It's not how many, it's the quality, right? So it's better to have one letter from a teacher that's stellar than have one that's stellar and two that are so-so, right? So we just want each letter to add something to that mix. And then ratio of teachers, admin, etc. Many of the selective colleges, they allow 2 or 3 teachers, and then, between 0 to 2 additional outside recommenders. So if you have a coach, if you have somebody from the administration that, the principal not so much, but the college counselor, your college counselor, will be writing a letter for you. So I would say outside letters of recommendation would be a coach or an art teacher or somebody outside of academics that has been very pivotal in your life and who you think really believes in you. That's what would help. And then, will this be available to listen to the replay? I have had half a dozen interruptions. Oh, sorry about that. I know how that is. Absolutely. I know that NSHSS posts this talk in a few days. It'll be on the website. And then, what high school years does college focus on? What high school years do colleges focus on the most? Yeah, so some colleges won't even look at ninth grade. Most will focus on 10th and 11th. However, they are looking at your cumulative GPA. So in that sense, every single year is important. However, if you have had certainly with COVID, I can't tell you the numbers of students we've worked with whose grades and whose experience and mental health has been so severely impacted by COVID, by the online teaching at the beginning. So tell your story. There are spaces on each application, whether it's University of California, whether it's Common App. There's always a space for additional information and explain, right? This is important because colleges want to see your academic performance and your extracurricular involvement in the context of your life. So be sure to include those details. But having said all of that, of course, 11th grade, which is generally the most challenging of the three, is going to be important because you'll kind of be at the peak in a way. Now, does 12th grade matter? 12th grade grades? Absolutely. First semester especially. So definitely don't think it's first 3 years of college, of high school, and then 12th grade doesn't matter. I had a student recently who said, yeah, my friend said that 12th grade doesn't matter. I was like, no, it does matter, because in January, your school will send a mid-year report to the colleges and they will see the 12th grade grades. So it's absolutely important to address. And to keep working, don't let your grades drop. Second semester, senior year, it depends what your GPA has been. If there's a slight little blip, it's not going to be the end of the world, and they're not going to rescind your offer of admission. But if your grades drop a lot, if you go from getting A's to getting C's, that's a problem. So be mindful of that. And then with so many schools now being test optional, what's your view on taking SAT or ACT? Yeah. So good question. Colleges are moving in the direction of test optional. There's no doubt about it, and it's been known for a very long time that these tests do not predict college readiness. They also are quite biased. And so that's the trend. However, until we get to the point where all schools are test blind, which means that even if you send them the scores, they won't look at them. Until we get to that point, I recommend that students prepare for the SAT or ACT. Students that work with us, we give them an SAT versus ACT diagnostic, which shows which of the two tests they are most likely to score higher on, and then we have them prepare for one of them. No need to take both SAT or ACT. What you want to do is you want to do intensive practice if possible. We do have amazing tutors, and so some students need tutoring. Some students are able, very disciplined, and are able to use Khan Academy and just do it on their own, and that's fine. Some students are great with online tutors. Some prefer in-person tutors. So the test prep part is very personal, and that should be tailored, right? But the fact, whether or not to take them and to prep for them, absolutely. And I never recommend that students just walk into a test with no prep. I mean, what's the point, right? If you prep, you're maximizing your chances of doing the best that you can. Colleges also, it's better not to send them 4 or 5 test scores. That's a lot, right? So go into the test having prepared, if possible. And, take it once, take it twice. Ideally, not more than a couple of times. If you have to take it a third time, okay. But it just, apart from everything else, the reason we don't recommend a ton of these is it takes up a lot of time. Who wants to sit for 3 hours on a Saturday morning? 5-6 times. I mean, there are many more interesting things for students to be involved in. So if you guys are maxed out for 12th graders, can you recommend another program? We only, you can certainly contact us offline and we can see what we can recommend. So reach out to us by email and we can see if we can help. Is there a valid reason that I did not do so well in a class due to it being full online class at its level of intensity when I strive? Not sure what your question is. Maybe you could rephrase it. It's anonymous question. Some students, and colleges understand this, some students did not do well with the online classes, especially at the beginning when high schools had to transition with no warning into an online environment. A lot of students struggled academically. In fact, what happened was, as a result of that year, they then lacked the basis for the following classes. So it affected their entire academic journey. And I believe it's very important to make sure that the colleges understand that, right? Now, there are things you can do. It depends what year you're in. So a valid reason. A school not being able to teach well online, or there are many different aspects of that online environment that were challenging to students. So I think if you explain it well, it can definitely be a valid reason. I've encouraged all the students who are working with us to tell their story, whatever that is. Obviously, if your story is, I got an A minus instead of an A plus, or I got an A instead of an A plus, that's not going to go over very well, right? But if there was an actual impact on learning, an impact on grades that's significant, then it's, or, if it was like a consistently 1 point below, that you would normally have been, you were getting A's and then it shifted to a B's, that's worth talking about. What are the parts of the application process? Oh, there's a lot of parts. I don't know whether you saw that slide that we had up for a little while, because there's answering the college questions, some of which are strategic. We don't want to just consider those application forms like kind of rote, that you're going to fill in by rote. Sometimes it's very important to think carefully about the major that you're going to be talking about in the application, because you may declare a major but have have not a very clear intention that that's what you want to do, but still it might be to a strategic advantage. So there are some strategic aspects of the actual application. There are the essays. There's also demonstrated interest component, which is showing the colleges in many different ways. And there are online ways, there are in-person ways, there are different ways to connect that you really are interested in the college. There's assembling all the documents. So we have to get letters from the teachers. We have to get letters from the counselor. And it's not just letters, because often in order to get great letters, you have to write. Some of the schools ask students to write a paragraph, answer some questions so that the recommenders have something to go on, especially if you have a really big school. Your teachers and counselor may not know you very well. So these schools are asking students to write these paragraphs. Those have to be done super carefully, because think about it. If that's what your teachers and your counselor are using to write the letter of recommendation, you'd better spend a good amount of time and give detailed answers, because that's what's going to end up in the letter, for a large part. And then there are interviews, so interview prep. There's the scores, the SAT scores, and the list goes on. So this just kind of, it is a good question, right? What are the parts? There are a lot of moving parts. That's what we were talking about in the complexity of the college application process. Question about what are the ideal SAT scores? That's an interesting question. So yes, getting a 1600 out of a 1600 is an ideal score. I mean, a perfect score is an ideal score. But when you're looking at the scores that you want to aim for, the important thing is to be at the top of the 50th percentile of the scores for the previous years for that school. So each school has a different 50th percentile. Let's say between one school will have a 50th percentile between 1100 and 1350. Another one will have between 1300 and 1500. Another one might be lower. Each one is different. And so you want to be at the top of the range for it to actually help you. If you're not at the top of that range, or in the high middle of that range, generally I recommend not submitting. There are some exceptions, right? Because we have to be strategic. If you're right in the middle for some schools, it might actually be a benefit to submit. It's just if you're at the bottom of that 50th percentile or below, it's generally not a good idea. Okay, how much time do I need to work with you weekly in your packages in order to gain the most benefits? Yeah, so there are going to be intense times and then there are going to be less intense times. So for an 11th grader, January, February, for the most part, will be, certain number of hours per week because you'll be writing essays. But apart from that, it's not a sustained amount of work throughout the entire year, right? It's going to be, we're going to accomplish certain specific things, and there'll be, interest and strengths assessment. You'll have a certain number of hours to take that test, and then for us to talk about it, and then you'll do some research about the career. So, we're not giving busy work. We want to help you get the job done in the best way possible. So we're keeping the work to a minimum. Yes. So, let's see. Yeah, college interviews. How do they work? What is their purpose? How should I prepare? Very good. So, interviews for the highly selective schools generally are given by alumni. As I said, I was an interviewer for Princeton for many years, and so I know the process very well. And what happens is the alumni who do that in the interviewing for those selective schools, they will then write a report after the interview and send it to admissions, and admissions will look at it. Now, generally speaking, interviews do not have a huge amount of weight, but all other things being equal, they can give you a boost, and that's a great opportunity for you to express your interest and to ask questions. Now, the process I take my students through is a 3-step process. I give them a mock interview, but before that, I have them research the schools. You have to go into an interview prepared. You can take a copy of your resume. A lot of the interviews are being done virtually, so you could have a copy ready, or not necessarily. It's not required, but that could be a nice thing to say to the interviewer, would you like to see a copy of my resume? And then you want to talk about yourself, so you need to prepare by kind of zooming in. I generally recommend to students that they start with the most general aspects of their lives, where they're from, what school they go to, and then they zoom in more and more into the things that you're interested in school, outside of school, what your major is going to be, career plans, or if you're undecided, what your interests are. And then they generally are going to ask you why are you interested in this school? So that's like a why us essay. Why do you want to apply to the school? And you have to be prepared. You have to do your homework, and you want to be specific. The courses you're interested in, the professors you want to work with, the mission of the school and why it aligns with your values. I mean, there's a certain number of questions that I take students through. And then you want to prepare some good questions. So if it's an alum, you're going to want to say, tell me about your experience with this school. If it's not an alumnus or an alumna, then you're going to, ask them general questions about what they like about the school, but then also specific questions. Just don't ask them something that can be answered on the website. That's not a good idea. Be very polite, be very appreciative of the time they're taking, and then write them a thank you note. That's my advice. Yeah, how much weightage does co-curricular, extracurricular activities carry in college admissions? That's the last question we're going to have time for. In holistic college admissions, which is very much what colleges are doing these days, it's going to carry weight, but it depends what kinds of extracurriculars. Again, don't think about extracurriculars or co-curriculars as a way of checking off boxes of what you think they want, right? Align your choices with what matters to you. Get involved in things that have meaning for you and that help and that you enjoy, because that is going to communicate in the story you tell to admissions. So I see that we still have some questions, just a few that we don't have time for, but I thank you so much for coming today. If you have something really burning, and of course you can reach out. I hope I see some of you in the strategy session, the discovery session. In fact, you'll be meeting with Brian. And if you're very interested in working with us, we'd love to see you. And for now, I just wish you joy in your learning and in your life.
Thank you, everyone.